And that segues beautifully into our last talk, Professor Amanda Devine from Edith Cowan University, who's Professor of Public Health and Nutrition in the School of Medical and Health Science there. Amanda's going to talk very specifically about eating and its impact on gut health, chronic disease and well-being. She's the co-author of Gut Feeling, Mindful Menus for the Microbiome, which I think there are some around. Thank you very much, Amanda.
Thanks, Joey. Can everyone hear me? Great. All right. So thanks very much for having me and for that lovely introduction. And it was a beautiful segue. Thank you, Liz, and also Fergal for your information that you provided to everyone. And really, I'm here today to talk about food and or have the food lens on it in terms of our gut health, and also going along with what Liz has just said about our healthy lifestyle and how we can do that. So really the talk I'm going to give now in 15 minutes really sort of illustrates that and how we can do it for you. Or you're going to do it for yourselves, really. So as we've heard today, we are understanding more about now the microbiome itself. Is that okay, everyone? The microbiome itself, but also how the diet and our health outcomes are all interrelated. And the role of the diet seems to be very important, and we need to feed our gut microbiome well every day. And that's really what I'm going to be talking about right now, but it doesn't always happen. And what we're seeing, and I think that's, you know, where everyone has been sort of talking about this environment, we talk about the food environment. And the food environment around us, in very close proximity to many of us, especially in urban areas, is more towards the right-hand side of the cartoon there of two individuals. If we did have a higher plant-based diet that was low in energy and nutrient dense, then we'd probably look more like the person on the left-hand side of the little cartoon. And we've got more than 2/3 and up to 75% of our population who are in an overweight or an obese state, and we know that that is a precursor to diabetes. When we're talking about our food intake, we really revert to the Australian Dietary Guidelines. So the round circle highlights the 5 food groups. We have plant-based foods in there, our cereals, and our whole grains, so getting back to what Liz just said, as close as it can be to how it looks like it was grown is best. We've also got our vegetables, which we don't eat enough of. We need 5 serves a day. We probably eat 2.5 if we're lucky, on a good day with the wind behind us. And fruit, generally, we do eat a reasonable intake of fruit, but we probably can increase that slightly. With some of the other foods there, our meat and meat alternatives, we can encourage more plant-based legumes and lentils and peas and beans, which also are in that group, and we've got our milk product. What we see on the bottom part of that slide, where the arrow is, are discretionary foods, and 1/3 of our energy intake comes from those discretionary food, even in 2 and 3-year-old children. Really, 100% should come from the circle, and as soon as we eat those foods, they should only be eaten occasionally and in small amounts, but 1/3 or more of our energy comes from those every day. This can lead to chronic diseases like Fergal has been talking about. 1 in 2 of Australians have chronic diseases, and they relate to diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer. And it really is, as Liz just said, about a healthy lifestyle, reducing your sodium intake, exercising more, and at ECU we're running a study in prostate cancer patients, trying to get them to exercise more and have a healthy diet. Also reducing alcohol intake and eating a diet that is rich in certain foods. The discretionary foods that we tend to overconsume are easily available in our current food environment, and we really need to think about how we consume those. And we really don't need to consume them every day, but generally people do. They are high in fat, salt, sugar. They are also highly refined and often referred to as ultra-processed foods. We don't really know what's in them. They don't look like anything like what they were grown as, and they're generally low in fibre. Now, what we have been talking about is feeding our gut microbiome. It needs to be fed well each day, and it needs fibre. Fibre contains resistant starch, and that is, which is hidden by that little picture there, but that is what actually feeds our gut microbiome, or some of the components of the foods that feed our gut microbiome. We need about 25 grams of fibre every day, and if we're a male, about 30 grams of fibre. And slides have changed somewhat, but there's also, we can aim for 28 grams a day of a female and 38 grams a day for a male. And this is probably about 8 to 10 serves of whole grain fruits and vegetables that you can consume over the day. There are lots of benefits to fibre which are also highlighted on this slide. But really, one of the benefits of fibre is the resistant starch that is in the fibre foods and the whole grain and whole plant foods. This resists digestion all the way through the digestive tract, gets to the lower part of the colon or the large intestine where the microbiota actually ferment it. And then they start producing some of these metabolites that Fergal and Liz have both referred to as short-chain fatty acids. We should try and aim for 15 to 20 grams of resistant starch a day. Some of the foods outlined there, firm green bananas, legumes, whole grain cereals, cold potatoes, etc., are great sources of resistant starch. Even high amylose, maize, flour is another good food source as well. But we only get about 4 grams a day in our current diet, so we need to be aiming for a lot more. Also, cooking our food and then cooling our food, like a potato being cooked and then having it as a potato salad, also increases the amount of resistant starch. Resistant starch feeds the microbiome. The microbiome are able to produce different short-chain fatty acids plus a range of other metabolites that Fergal has talked about. And these are very important in your digestive health, also about producing a protective mucus for the colonocytes, actually in the lumen of the large intestine. It also supplies an energy source for those cells. So all of these things are going on, protecting your gut health. The butyrate also improves that mucus layer, and some of the other short-chain fatty acids can actually improve your glucose handling. If we deprive if you deprive your food intake of fibre, then you can actually, as also Fergal talked about, have increased, sort of get out of balance and have an increase in bacteria that actually can eat away the mucus and degrade the actual lumen and cause issues relating to your gut health. We also know that, as the others have talked about, that resistant starch is important in diabetes management, and there's been a systematic review and also a meta-analysis just recently that has pulled together all the literature or relevant literature after a large search to actually look at the evidence of resistant starch supplementation in overweight and obese people in terms of improving that glucose handling, reducing fasting glucose, improving insulin resistance and sensitivity, and maintenance of your HbA1c. So from all that evidence and from some of the other work that we've done at the university with Klaus Christofferson, who's also a microbiologist and used to work at CSIRO, we produced a cookbook. And this was because we got asked by the Ask the Doctor from the ABC to actually come and visit the university and look at the kind of research we were doing. So what we did is, everyone watched the Ask the Doctor on the television show. So there's Shaylin and Klaus were the two, that's our sample size of 2. And we gave them these little eskies. So even though Liz did talk about the mums bringing in stool samples from babies' nappies, we had Shaylin and Klaus actually collecting their stool samples. And some of the studies that we run, we need 24 and 48-hour stool samples. And everyone puts their hand up and says, yeah, I'm happy to do that. So we give them an esky with lots of blue plastic bags that fit inside the toilet, and then in a 24-hour period they have to collect their stool samples. They double bag it for us, pop it into the esky, which has some nice ice packs, bring it into the university, and then we're able to pop it into a minus 80 degree freezer. And then we need to homogenise, and that's where our PhD students come in handy, to actually homogenise those stool samples all together and then take little aliquots and samples. I mean, people might only do one, but they might do 3, 4 or whatever. So we got Klaus and young Shaylin to do that. We also took some blood samples. And remember those discretionary foods? We made up a diet that they had to follow for 2 weeks that were quite high in those discretionary foods, which represented what our Australian population ate. Then we redid the sampling and took more stool samples, more blood samples, popped those aside. Then there was a washout period for 1 week, and then I had to design a diet high in resistant starch using some of the databases some of our other PhD students had used. That isn't me, by the way. And then we made the fellows follow that for another 2 weeks, and the difference was amazing. They felt better. Shaylin, could go to the toilet regularly, his mood had improved, etc. So essentially, as we were filming, we were thinking we really need to put this into a book. When we looked at the data before and after the high sort of Australian diet, high in discretionary food and high in a high resistant starch diet, we actually found that the microbiota abundance of different ones had changed dramatically and had improved to a healthier diet, as had the short chain fatty acids. Bearing in mind this is not a clinical trial in the sense it was for a television show, but the concept was there. And what we have done then is translated the information that we have in the literature about the foods that are rich in resistant starch. We know resistant starch is a prebiotic that feeds the microbiome and helps increase those short chain fatty acids that improve the health of your bowel. So then we started putting them into, or formulating them into a cookbook where you can actually see a daily plan that actually tries to put the foods over the day which are high in resistant starch. Of course, we needed to make recipes so people could go home and make these types of diets, make these meals for themselves, all of which are quite low GI. We also realised that this recipe book is able to provide you some information on how to improve the sustainability, I suppose. This is not a diet. This is something you need to do forever. We need to eat more whole foods. We need to not use salt. We need to use more plants like herbs and spices to flavour our food. We need to use up leftovers so we don't waste as much food. So all of these things we felt we sort of ticked off at the same time that we were creating this cookbook. The cookbook also isn't necessarily suitable for people who have celiac disease because it isn't gluten-free, but people can swap those ingredients out. Similarly, if there are allergies like a milk allergy, there's milk in the recipe book. It's a very basic recipe book with low GI menus and whole foods. Similarly, if you had sensitivity to FODMAPs, which is fermentable oligosaccharides, monosaccharides, disaccharides and other polyols, then again you would need to take out some of the ingredients that are high FODMAP ingredients and actually replace those for low FODMAP. So remember also, if you are interested in looking at this cookbook and purchasing a copy, you also might find that you have a few obviously dietary changes, and that could cause bowel changes. And the other thing is, by virtue of the fact that you're increasing your fibre intake because of the recipes are high fibre and high resistant starch, that you also need to increase your water intake because that will help things move through. So some take-home messages there are evidence to support resistant starch as a preventative strategy to improve gut health, and this really lends itself to the whole lifestyle approach that we've talked about. We know resistant starch has an important role in improving people's gut health, and this is a way to go about it. And the Gut Feeling Cookbook really translates the knowledge that we have at the moment into practice, so it's something that you can do. So your call to action is really that you need to look after or pay attention to your gut microbiome every day. It's about looking after that, and then those metabolites that you need will be produced, etc., and improve your whole health and well-being, we hope. And there's more, obviously, research that needs to be done. We're also encouraging you to increase a plant-based diet. We know that you really need to include more plant foods at each meal. Also adding legumes to meals to actually extend the meal itself and reduce your intake of meat. Eat whole grains, like Liz says, getting back to basics in terms of how the food was grown and less processed foods. Eat your leftovers because, again, cooking and cooling food, especially potatoes, some of the rices and pastas, actually increases the resistant starch. And even if you reheat it, when you go to work the next day, it can even be higher in resistant starch again. Remember to drink water and try some new recipes to share with your friends and family. We are actually recruiting some people for a new study. So Kathy Latino, who's a dietitian at Fiona Stanley Hospital, is one of my PhD students, and she actually needs new participants who have just newly diagnosed with diabetes or early diabetes to actually look at encouraging them to eat resistant starch and using one of those monitors that Jamie said he sometimes wears. But you do need to be female and able to come up to Joondalup to visit us. And if you are interested, please email Kathy or let me know. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Fergal. And please also thank Joey, our Ironman facilitator, for that session. We're just going to wrap up now. The importance of the gut. I didn't realise as a layperson how important the gut is. A couple of takeaways for me: eat healthily, exercise, and probably get dirty. But a few thank yous for today. I would like to thank Cheryl and Dion and Nat. Thank you. Nat's done all the media for the organisation to get us all here today and help us. Dennis, who's not here today, Dennis Cometti, who did a great job interviewing Jamie. I want to thank Jamie in particular. Thanks also, Jamie, for coming on board as an ambassador. We really appreciate it. My mum and dad, and Beth and Bill for helping get things organised here today, and all you do for Diabetes Research WA. Mum, you should have let me get a bit more dirtier when I was younger, maybe. And what I want to do is also just go back to our little 1%er challenge. So the 1%ers matter, as the footy team know. I treat this as the third quarter. Another football analogy: we fill the MCG every year in Australia with newly diagnosed diabetics. So it's over 100,000 people newly diagnosed every day, or every year in Australia. So we fill that football stadium to capacity, and all of the research we do on your behalf and with your help is helping us to prevent, manage, and hopefully contribute to a cure for diabetes. And wouldn't it be a great thing to dare to dream that we can help those 4 families that Liz spoke about on her round this morning, when she went around her rounds, and the kids who are, one of whom she said was 12 months old. Wouldn't it be great to be able to cure diabetes in that person's lifetime? So I'm just going to go back to Chuffed plus Cripper. So you can all do things for us to help us. Every dollar matters, every percent matters. So we really appreciate your support. On your chair you would have seen a little promotion material with a little magnet on the back. Sneak it into your work. Put it on the fridge. Please share on your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter if you have it. Maybe we don't have 100,000 followers like Cripper here, but even if you've got your 2 grandkids, share it with them, because getting the word out for our campaign, we can help raise $60,000 to fund one of our grants for this year. I'm just going to go in and see how we've gone, third quarter, so I'll give you all to the end of the day, and we'll have a look at where we are at the end of today. Whoa, so we did pretty well. So we're under, I think we were probably just over 3,500. So we've added another $1,000 in the last 60 minutes. That's pretty good. That's 1%. The 1%ers matter. So thank you all. You've still got some time till later this afternoon if you need more time to just put a couple of extra dollars our way. That'd be really appreciated. But we're going to wrap up now. Thank you all for coming along today. We really appreciate it on behalf of Diabetes Research WA, on behalf of everyone that spoke today. The research is really important. The analogy of, as I call it, the bricks in the wall, and each piece of research is really important for that wall to hold up, and one day a certain number of bricks will link together to hopefully find a cure. I'm sure of it. So appreciate your help. Thank you for your support and have a good day.